Alright, y'all. I know you already scrolled past the Safari engagement post. If you somehow didn't, don't worry, I got it. But I've been pulling other receipts, because folks who actually move in these circles are quietly saying Joe McCann walked himself straight into this. And if the people watching this case keep letting that polite hedge fund founder framing slide, Ashley Genai's name is going to get buried under a stack of polished press releases the same way too many of our sisters before her got buried. Y'all, let's get into this. I got the receipts. I got the screenshots. I got the timeline. I got the quotes nobody on cable news has the spine to read out loud. Joe McCann is sitting in a hotel suite in Zanzibar with a confiscated passport, a pinned quote from a literal pimp on his profile, and a sudden urge to redesign his entire public image while a young black woman's body finally crossed an ocean to come home. Bro really thought scrubbing a profile picture was going to put this fire out? Nah. Let me walk y'all through what actually happened, because the timeline of this whole thing reads like a horror film somebody dressed up in a love story trench coat. April 9th, 2026. A young black woman named Ashley Robinson, known to her 100,000 followers as Ashley Genai, was found unresponsive inside a hotel room in Zanzibar, Tanzania, days after what looked online like the engagement of the year to crypto hedge fund founder Joe McCann, as detailed by People magazine. She was 31. She was a Miami-based lifestyle creator. She was, by every account from the people who actually knew her in real life, building, planning, stacking. And then, in the span of 6 days, that future got wiped clean off the map. Now, the hospital paperwork? The hospital paperwork tells the first part of this story, and it tells it real loud. According to a hospital report reviewed by ABC News, her cause of death was listed as cerebral hypoxia due to strangulation and suffocation, with an unidentified mark visible on her neck, also covered by 6 ABC Philadelphia. Read those words again slow. Cerebral hypoxia, strangulation, suffocation, an unidentified mark. Pause. Those are not the words anybody writes on a death certificate when somebody quietly closes their eyes and never opens them again. Those are the words you write when something violent unfolded inside that room, and somebody else was breathing in that room when it did. And here is where the story gets disrespectful to your intelligence, y'all. According to early reports, Joe McCann's initial account allegedly framed her death as a suicide, that she hung herself. A framing that family and friends immediately disputed publicly per all hip-hop. Bro Joe, my guy? You really thought she hung herself was going to seal the case shut? You really thought 4 little words and a one-way flight back to the States was going to make 100,000 followers, a grieving father, a publicist best friend, and the entire black internet just nod and scroll past? The medical paperwork disagreed with you on day 1. The mark on her neck disagreed with you on day 1. The hotel staff who reportedly had to physically separate y'all the night before disagreed with you on day 1. This man rolled the dice on the laziest cover story in true crime history, and the dice came up snake eyes before the body even left the country. So now we're going to do what the mainstream press is too polite to do. We are going to pull every receipt, every DM, every screenshot, every quote, every timeline entry this man was praying nobody bothered to save. Because Ashley Robinson cannot speak for herself anymore. So we're going to let the receipts speak for her. Let's go. Before we get into theories, before we get into vibes, before we get into anybody's hot take, let's just look at what people put on the record with their own names attached. Because in a case like this one, the quote bank is a crime scene. The words people pick, the words they refuse to pick, the silences they protect, all of it is evidence. And what y'all are about to read tells on everybody involved. Let's start with the woman who lit the match. Ashley's close friend, PR executive Savannah Britt, took to X this month and posted what may be the single most consequential sentence of this entire investigation. She wrote, and I quote, "We need justice for my friend Ashley Genai, who was found dead in a hotel in Tanzania, and her fiancé Joe McCann claims she hung herself. Anyone who knows Ash knows she would never commit suicide. We need answers now." Stop. I had to read that thing 3 times. 3 times. Because that is not some random stranger speculating from a couch in Atlanta. That is a best friend with a public-facing career willing to put her professional reputation on the line by naming the fiancé in the same breath as a cause of death. A public statement that ignited the entire conversation, per all hip-hop. Listen, PR executives don't post sentences like that without lawyers on speed dial. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was lighting a flare in the legal sky. And Joe McCann's people, whoever they are, completely missed it. And let me say this for the people in the back row, because I keep seeing the same comment under every video about this case. Somebody commented, and I quote, "Why would the best friend post that publicly if it wasn't real?" Exactly. That is the whole point. A publicist with her name on her chest doesn't risk her entire career on a hunch. She risks it on a knowing. Another comment I saw said, Savannah didn't just post. She built a case. Yeah, sis, that is exactly what she did. That post wasn't grief. That post was the first page of a courtroom binder. Then the volume got turned all the way up to a level Joe McCann was not prepared for in this lifetime or the next. Cardi B, Belcalis Marlene's Almanzar herself, reshared Britt's message and added her own words, openly questioning the suicide ruling and standing alongside the family's call for answers. A res hair that detonated the story straight into the international news cycle per Hindustan Times. And listen, when Cardi co-signs with a doubt, the algorithm doesn't stop and ask for permission. It just delivers. Within hours, a regional tragedy became a national conversation. Within a day, it became an international one. That is the gravitational pull of one A-list cosign at the exact correct moment. And Joe McCann's PR team, if such a thing even exists in this scenario, never saw the meteor coming. Britt then tightened the screws. In a follow-up statement to Hello, Beautiful magazine this week, she said plainly, because the investigation's ongoing, her parents and I are not taking interviews at this time. Short, surgical, stitched up tight like a closing argument, as reported by Hello, Beautiful. Y'all, I need you to really understand what that sentence is actually doing. The body is home. The mouths are sealed. The lawyers are working. That is not silence out of grief. That is silence out of strategy. That is the tone of a family that has already been advised, prepared, and aimed. Joe McCann thought he was the only one who knew how to play quiet. Nah, sweetheart. He's playing quiet with no plan. They are playing quiet with a roadmap. Now let me get to the receipt that hurt me the most personally. On the Joe Budden podcast, the rapper himself, Joseph Anthony Budden II, revealed that he didn't just know of Ashley. He knew her, personally. In his own words, Ashley and homegirl was at my birthday dinner. I invited Ashley the last 2 years to my birthday dinner. So this year I made it a point to get on the phone, like, yo, this is the year. You going to make it? And she was like, yeah, just gotta check on my man. We gotta drop off the stepkids. Stop. Pause. Rewind. A clip that's been circulating widely on Instagram from the Joe Budden podcast. Stepkids. Stepkids. Plural. Y'all caught that? She was already in the trenches of stepmom duty for a man who was barely 2.5 years out of a divorce. She was already doing the drop-offs. She was already doing the logistics. She was already absorbing the emotional weight of somebody else's blended family. And the ring on her finger was less than a week old. That single sentence tells you everything you need to know about what kind of engagement this really was. And then there is the man at the center of it all. Joe McCann, the supposed fiancé, the grieving partner, the one person on this entire planet who could clear all of this up with one honest paragraph. And what has Joe McCann said publicly? Not one word. Fortune confirmed in their own pages that they sent multiple text messages seeking comment, writing that McCann, who did not return multiple text messages seeking comment, as documented in Fortune's reporting. CBS News reached out. ABC News reached out. NBC News reached out. Newsweek reached out, with multiple major outlets confirming his refusal to respond per CBS News. Same silence across the board. Bro said what? Exactly. He said nothing. And let me explain to the people in the back why that is the dumbest legal posture I have ever witnessed playing out in real time. When every credible outlet on planet Earth is blowing up your phone, no comment does not read as innocent. It reads as guilt with a publicist on retainer. It reads as a man who knows that anything he says will get cross-referenced against forensic findings he cannot predict yet. It reads like calculation. And calculation, y'all, is not what an innocent man does 12 hours after his fiancée dies in a hotel room. The only person in this entire saga whose voice cut through the noise with raw, unfiltered humanity was Ashley's father, Harry Robinson. Through all of it, the news cycles, the speculation, the international jurisdictional swamp, Harry finally posted on his own page, Our baby is back home in the States. 5 words. Just 5. And I am going to be honest with y'all. When I read that one, I had to put my phone down. Because that is a father refusing to let an ocean bury his child. That is a father who flew, called, fought, and pulled until his daughter's body was on American soil where American forensics could finally have their say. 5 words from that man carries more weight than every press release Joe McCann's lawyers will ever file. 5. Listen, I want y'all to read those 5 words again. Our baby is back home in the States. That is the sound of a father who stopped negotiating with embassies, stopped waiting on diplomats, stopped trusting any system that wasn't his own. That is the sound of a man who said, "My daughter is coming home, and I do not care what flight I have to charter or what door I have to knock on. She is coming home." And she did. Now that we got the quotes laid out flat on the table, let's connect the dots. Because the timeline of this case is where the actual horror lives. This is the part of the script where y'all need to lean in close, because the dates in this story whisper things Joe McCann really does not want said out loud. And once you see them lined up in order, you cannot unsee them. Start with the engagement post. That viral safari proposal. The one with the rose petals scattered like a Pinterest mood board. The one with the lion casually framed in the background like an extra in a Disney film. The one Ashley captioned with one single word, "Yes." That post dropped on April 3rd, 2026. 6 days. 6 days. A timeline confirmed in the public Instagram archive and reported by CBS Philadelphia. 6 days separated the most public romantic moment of her life from the most violent one. That ring sat on her finger for less than a week before her body was found in a hotel room with an unidentified mark on her neck. There is no version of this timeline that does not turn your stomach. None. 0. Run the math however you want. Lay the dates out on a calendar. The picture does not change. 6 days is not a season of love. 6 days is barely a work week. 6 days is the runway between a viral proposal and a sealed hotel room. Now lay in the fight. According to multiple reports, hotel staff in Zanzibar reported they had to separate the couple into different rooms after an argument the night before she was found unresponsive. A detail Joe McCann conveniently forgot to mention to anybody, including Ashley's own family. Tanzanian investigators later confirmed that Ashley had been in an altercation with him in the hours before her death, a critical detail reported by 6ABC. So let me get this straight. Joe, you walk into a police interview believing she hung herself, is going to stick when the front desk staff already filed a paper trail of y'all screaming at each other the night before? That is not a defense. That is a confession with extra steps. Then there is the 2024 detail nobody is talking about loudly enough. Joe McCann started dating Ashley in November of 2024. That same year, his social media activity references domestic life, his children, his prior relationships. But here is what Fortune dug up that the romance fairy tale deliberately leaves out. McCann was previously married in 2018 to Shay Jackson, a brand marketing professional roughly 10 years younger than him, with the marriage ending in divorce in 2021, as confirmed by Fortune's investigative reporting. And it gets messy, eh? 2 founders who had received venture investments from McCann's hedge fund Asymmetric reportedly told Fortune that part of his ownership stake was transferred to Jackson as part of that divorce settlement. Translation? This is a man with a documented pattern. Marry someone significantly younger. Divorce. Lose equity. Repeat the cycle. That is not a love story. That is a business cycle wearing a wedding ring. The hip-hop access angle is the one I want everybody to really sit with for a second. That dinner at Joe Budden's house wasn't a random night out for Joe McCann. That dinner placed a 44-year-old crypto hedge fund manager directly inside hip-hop's inner social architecture. And the only reason he was at that table was because Ashley was at that table. Ashley Robinson, the 31-year-old Miami influencer. The woman who had appeared in Drake's Falling Back music video back in 2022. A credit confirmed by entertainment outlets, including the Sunday Guardian. She wasn't his plus one. She was his access pass. She was the cultural visa that let a finance bro from Philadelphia step into rooms his portfolio could never have bought him into. And while he was riding her cultural currency in public, the receipts now suggest he was running an entirely different game in private. Any man with real advisors, real PR, real legal, real elders, would have kept his nose immaculate knowing every move was getting filmed for somebody's Instagram grid. But Joe McCann clearly doesn't have advisors. He has a hedge fund and a pinned tweet from a literal pimp. And speaking of his portfolio, the crypto context tells on him in a way most outlets are too polite to spell out loud. Asymmetric Financial, the hedge fund Joe McCann founded, had its liquid book reportedly ballooned to nearly $395 million at its peak. Big numbers, big headlines, big ego. But by late 2025, unconfirmed reports suggest his fund was down nearly 80%. And McCann himself announced he was shutting down the liquid alpha arm, as detailed in Fortune's coverage. So now sequence it for me. Failing fund in late 2025. Public embarrassment in crypto Twitter circles. Then, 6 months later, a sudden photogenic safari engagement to a viral black lifestyle influencer with hip-hop industry access? That is not love at first sight, sweetheart. That is a brand reset with a budget. And Ashley was the headline he needed to outrun the L. Hold on, let me roll this back. Failing fund. Bleeding L piece. Public ratio on crypto Twitter. Then suddenly, a soft-lit safari, a viral proposal, and a black lifestyle influencer with cultural keys on her keychain. You don't have to be a forensic accountant to read this transaction. You just have to be honest. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Now check this out, because I am about to walk y'all through the forensic layers underneath the public surface. The layers nobody on cable news has the time or the courage to break down on air. Hold on, let me roll this back so we don't miss anything. We're going through this slow, layer by layer, receipt by receipt. Layer 1, the linguistic forensic. Y'all, go back and zoom into one specific word from Savannah Britt's whole expose. Claimed she hung herself. The word claimed. Not said. Not stated. Not reported. Claimed. Now I want y'all to understand something about how PR executives actually talk. That single verb is a legal landmine wrapped in a bow. Claimed is the exact word attorneys and crisis communicators use when they want to signal on the public record that a statement should not be trusted, a stylistic choice highly visible in her original Instagram post. She did not pick that word by accident. She picked it because she is a professional, and professionals weaponize verbs the way other people weaponize emojis. That post wasn't a tweet. That was a flare gun fired into the legal sky. And Joe McCann's people didn't catch it. That right there is embarrassing. Layer 2, the family forensic. Zoom back into Joe Budden's stepkids detail. The real story is in the plural. Stepkids. The Fortune piece referenced McCann's prior marriage to Shay Jackson, and McCann's own social media has historically referenced children. So when Ashley told Joe Budden on the phone that she had to drop off the stepkids before flying out to Tanzania, that was not a slip of the tongue, as captured in the widely shared Joe Budden podcast clip. That was a 31-year-old woman, quietly, almost casually, admitting she had inherited an entire blended family workload before a ring was even on her finger. She wasn't just becoming a wife. She was already operating as a stepmother, an unpaid logistics manager, and an emotional support system for a man who couldn't even publicly close out his last chapter. Bro had her playing stepmom and fiancé on a discount budget. That one line, said in passing on a podcast, exposes the actual labor structure of this so-called fairy tale engagement. And I want y'all to really sit in the weight of that, because the way black women get recruited into other people's chaos and rebranded as the perfect partner is a generational pattern we keep ignoring. Ashley wasn't just shopping a ring. She was already on the clock. She was the unpaid intern of his domestic life. And the contract she didn't even know she signed had a termination clause neither of us saw coming. Layer 3, the visual forensic. Y'all, this one. Joe McCann's profile picture switch this week was not random. The previous one, described publicly as a close-up image with a piece of cloth covering part of his face, got swapped overnight for something cleaner, more conservative, more presentable. Savannah Britt called it for exactly what it was on her own page, a PR move, a calculated optics adjustment to make him look like a decent man, as called out in a viral Instagram post. And online observers caught something even crazier. His ex-wife, Shay Jackson, reportedly changed her profile picture around the exact same window. Two people connected to the same man scrubbing their digital imagery in sync. In the same week his fiancé's body was being flown back to America? Class, any answers? That ain't coincidence. That's a coordinated optics play. And here is the part Joe doesn't seem to grasp at all. The internet archives the original. Screenshots existed before the swap. You cannot delete receipts on a generation that grew up with a screenshot button on every app they own. Look at this. Take another look at that picture. I'll give you 3 seconds. Yeah, exactly. Layer 4, the symbolic forensic. This one. Listen, this is the kind of detail that keeps me up at night. Joe McCann's ex-bio reportedly carries a pinned quote attributed to Iceberg Slim. Only a fool trips on what's behind them. Iceberg Slim. Let me give y'all the context. Joe McCann is hoping nobody bothers to Google. Iceberg Slim was the literal author of Pimp, the story of my life. Not a metaphor. Not a misquoted hood philosopher. Not some clever rebrand. The actual man. The actual book. The actual genre. And this is a 44-year-old hedge fund manager with a reported $45 million net worth choosing, voluntarily, publicly, on a platform with 100,000 followers watching, to pin a pimp's philosophy as his life motto. That is not aesthetics, y'all. That is a worldview. And in the light of everything we now know, the younger fiancé, the prior divorce settlement, the public engagement post 6 days before her death, the silence after, that pinned quote stops reading like a flex and starts reading like a confession written in metaphor. Layer 5, the legal forensic. As of this script being written, Joe McCann is being held as a witness, not yet a suspect. His passport remains confiscated. No charges have been filed. And listen close to this part. There is no publicly identified attorney representing him, a detail confirmed by CBS News reporting. For a man worth tens of millions of dollars to not have a lawyer publicly attached to his name after 17+ days of relentless international press, something is off. Either his legal team is deliberately telling him to stay invisible, which signals exposure to me, or Tanzanian jurisdiction is so unfamiliar that his American lawyers literally cannot help him in real time. Both reads are bad. Both reads are very bad. Either way, this man is sitting in a hotel in Zanzibar typing absolutely nothing into the void while the entire global internet decodes his life paragraph by paragraph. That is not strength, y'all. That is a man who has already lost the narrative and just doesn't know it yet. And let me clarify one thing for the folks who keep emailing me. No, this is not me convicting him in a courtroom. I cannot do that. Only a judge and a jury can do that. What I am doing, what we are doing right now together, is reading the receipts that are already public. The same receipts a prosecutor will eventually be holding. Same hospital report. Same hotel staff statement. Same 6-day timeline. Same pinned philosophy. Same scrubbed profile. If those receipts make him look bad, that is not my problem. That is his. Now let's talk about how the media itself is carving up this case, because the framing tells you everything about whose side each outlet is quietly playing. And the framing is wild. Fortune framed Joe McCann as a high-flying crypto trader, leaning hard on the philosophy degree, the DJ origin story, the Andreessen Horowitz adjacency, as laid out in Fortune's profile. That is classic finance magazine framing. Heavy emphasis on the portfolio. Polite, soft emphasis on the dead fiancé. But credit where credit is due. Fortune is the outlet that actually put the divorce settlement equity transfer on the public record, citing 2 named investor sources. That is not gossip. That is investigative. CBS News took a much sharper angle. Their headline framed McCann as a partner held in Zanzibar, placing police custody front and center of the story. But CBS News, the verb held is a different temperature than the verb questioned. Held implies confinement. Held implies friction. CBS Philadelphia leaned even harder into the family's perspective, with Harry Robinson and Yolanda Andress's demand for answers becoming the central beat, not McCann's portfolio, as covered by CBS Philadelphia. That is the framing that puts the human cost first. People magazine framed it through the engagement lens, hammering days before her death, to build the emotional weight around the safari proposal per People's coverage. Newsweek went straight at McCann's identity, framing the headline around, "Who is Joe McCann?" putting his name directly in the SEO crosshairs of every reader Googling this case, as Newsweek titled their feature. And Blavity, writing for a black audience, framed Ashley as a black woman who never made it back home, centering the racial pattern of overseas death cases that mainstream press routinely downplays per Blavity's reporting. Now I already see the comments coming. McCann's defenders online are already typing, he hasn't been charged. The ruling is preliminary. You're jumping the gun. And to those people I want y'all to actually look at the same set of facts. Hotel staff reportedly separated the couple after the fight. The medical report listed strangulation and suffocation. There is an unidentified mark on her neck. His behavior, the silence, the profile scrub, the pinned pimp quote, the missing lawyer, looks nothing like the behavior of an innocent man processing the worst day of his life. The media is bending over backwards to give Joe McCann the benefit of polite framing. But the receipts don't lie. If after the engagement timeline, the divorce settlement, the stepkids reveal, the PR scrubbing, and the international silence, you still think Joe walks out of this with a clean look, you are not being a skeptic. You are just being biased. But here is what nobody is saying. And this is the part the institutions don't want me to put on the record. The mainstream version of this story is being carefully framed as a tragic vacation gone wrong, involving a wealthy crypto guy and a beautiful influencer. That is the polite version. That is the version that lets corporate boards, hedge fund LPs, and TV news anchors sleep comfortably at night without ever having to ask uncomfortable questions about the systems that produce this outcome. So let me give y'all the version they're scared to broadcast. This is not a what happened in Tanzania story. This is an industry politics story dressed up in a true crime jacket. And underneath the headlines, what this case is actually exposing is how the modern crypto bro economy uses black women as cultural laundry, as visibility, as access, as soft life decoration to launder the reputations of guys the markets have already started to reject. Sit with that for a second. Sit with that. By late 2025, Joe McCann's hedge fund was reportedly down nearly 80%. He was publicly shutting down the Liquid Alpha arm, the 2023 top-performing hedge fund globally headline he had built his entire personal brand on. Cooked. Dead. A relic per Fortune financial reporting. So what does a 44-year-old crypto founder do when his portfolio is bleeding numbers and his Twitter timeline is full of LS that LPs are absolutely watching? He doesn't rebrand his fund. That takes years. He rebrands his life. He attaches himself, almost overnight, to a 31-year-old viral black lifestyle influencer with Drake music video credits, hip-hop dinner table access, and 100,000 followers ready to root for soft life love. And he proposes on a safari, with a lion in the frame, with rose petals so perfectly placed they look like they were laid out by a marketing intern with a Pinterest mood board open. That is not romance, y'all. That is a content strategy with a ring on it. Joe McCann wasn't her fiancé. He was a brand parasite. And Ashley was supposed to be the host body that carried his image back to relevance. Now circle back to that pinned iceberg slim quote, because here is the real reason it matters as evidence. Only a fool trips on what's behind them. That is not stoicism. That is not Marcus Aurelius repackaged for crypto Twitter. That is the philosophical thesis of a man who views the people around him as inventory. Assets to use, depreciate, and discard. That sentence is the operating manual of someone trained to never look back at the wreckage they leave behind. And in a culture where crypto Twitter literally celebrates the slogan, no emotion, just gains, Joe McCann found himself a peer group that financially rewarded him for treating human beings like positions in a portfolio. That is not a personality, y'all. That is a manufactured persona. And now that the fund has collapsed and the fiancé is gone, that persona is unraveling on live television, in real time, in front of the entire internet. Then there is the historical pattern. And this is the part that should keep every black woman with a passport up at night. Listen, lean in. Black American women who pass overseas under disputed circumstances face a documented set of structural barriers when their families try to get answers. There is limited U.S. legal standing in foreign investigations. There is heavy State Department restraint due to host country sovereignty. And most damning of all, there is chronic media undercoverage compared to similar cases involving women from other demographics. This is not theory. This is not a vibe. Researchers have actually tracked this disparity. We saw it with Shankella Robinson in Mexico. We saw it with countless names that never trended at all because there was no Cardi B or repost to push the algorithm in their favor. The list keeps growing. We have seen this exact playbook before. And every single time, the burden of investigation falls back onto the family, onto the friends, onto a single PR exec like Savannah Britt firing off exposes at 2 a.m, because no government agency, no embassy, no international body will pick up the slack. A structural failure highlighted in Hello Beautiful's reporting. The system was designed to let men like Joe McCann win by default. We are watching, in real time. This family refused to let that default outcome happen. Now layer in the cultural impact angle, because this is where Ashley's death stops being a personal tragedy and becomes a generational rupture. Ashley Robinson appeared in Drake's Falling Back video. She was invited to Joe Budden's birthday dinner 2 years in a row. She moved through hip-hop's inner social architecture as a rising influencer who built her own personal brand around soft life empowerment, around the radical idea that Black women in their 30s could choose themselves, refuse to settle, and build independent online empires without asking permission from anybody. Her death isn't just a tragedy. It is a cultural rupture. She represents an entire generation of Black women who built 6- and 7-figure brands on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube without ever signing to a label, an agency, or a man. And the lesson the streets are pulling from her case is brutal in its clarity. Even when you make it, even when you are at Drake's video shoot and Joe Budden's dinner table, marrying outside your community to a man with a documented prior divorce, a financial bleed, and a pinned pimp philosophy can still cost you your life. That is not a culture war hot take. That is a receipt this case left on the curb. The psychological warfare layer is what really seals it for me. Joe McCann hasn't said a single public word in over 17 days. That isn't grief, y'all. Grief makes people release statements through publicists. Grief makes people light candles and post black squares on a feed. Joe's silence is something different. Joe's silence is a chess move. He is calculating that if he stays quiet long enough, Tanzanian jurisdictional friction, U.S. diplomatic restraint, and the natural 3-week attention span of the modern news cycle will erode the story until charges become functionally impossible to pursue. He is playing the clock. But here is where the whole calculation breaks all the way down. Savannah Britt is also playing the clock. Cardi B is also playing the clock. Joe Budden is also playing the clock. Harry Robinson is also playing the clock. Joe McCann is sitting in Zanzibar playing checkers while the people who actually loved Ashley are playing chess. And they are playing it with a documentary deal already in mind, a strategic standoff that is already shaping the public record before June even gets here. Every move he makes, the profile pic switch, the silent treatment, the pinned philosophy, is predictable. He has already lost the narrative. He just doesn't know he's lost yet. And that is the truth they don't want me to put on the record. This wasn't a vacation. This wasn't a tragedy. This was a portfolio rebrand that required a victim. So now the question becomes, what happens next? Here is what I think is most likely to play out from this point forward. Mark these words. Bookmark this script. Come back to this video in 6 months and tell me how many of these scenarios played out exactly the way I am laying them out right here, right now. When the full forensic findings are formally released to Harry Robinson, Yolanda Endress, and their legal team, the strangulation and suffocation language from the preliminary hospital report is going to land in one of 3 ways. It is going to be confirmed, it is going to be expanded, or it is going to be contradicted. And here is the part Joe McCann needs to internalize before he sleeps tonight. All 3 outcomes burn him. If it is confirmed, charges become almost unavoidable because Tanzanian authorities will have international press pressure stacked on top of forensic confirmation. And the political cost of not pressing charges will outweigh whatever diplomatic comfort comes from letting a wealthy American walk. If the language gets expanded, meaning additional findings, additional bruising, additional evidence of struggle, it gets exponentially worse for him, because expanded findings tell the story of a fight, not an accident. And if it gets contradicted, if Tanzanian authorities try to soften the report, Harry Robinson's family is absolutely going to pursue an independent American forensic exam now that Ashley's body is on U.S. soil. That secondary autopsy will be conducted by American pathologists who don't owe Tanzanian authorities or the Zanzibar tourism economy a single thing. And when that report drops, Joe McCann is going to look like a man screaming into the void. The silence he is banking on as a strategy is going to read as consciousness of guilt the second a U.S. pathologist signs a contradicting document. He'll try to escalate with a sudden lawyer statement or a reluctant interview. Nobody is going to care. The narrative will already be set in stone. If Tanzanian charges get tangled in jurisdictional limbo, slow processes, intergovernmental friction, evidence chain of custody disputes, Harry Robinson's legal team is going to pivot. They're going to take this fight to civil court right here in the United States. And here is the part Joe McCann's accountants need to understand right now, today. Wrongful death suits don't require criminal convictions. They require preponderance of evidence. That is a much, much lower bar. With the family's GoFundMe already past $63,000, and with a community of strangers funding the fight from across the country, the family will have the resources to drag McCann's reported $45 million net worth into discovery proceedings, the financial valuation reported by Fortune. And discovery, y'all, is where the wheels come all the way off. Discovery is where every text message, every DM, every asymmetric financial email, every divorce settlement document with Shay Jackson, every Zanzibar hotel receipt, every safari planning email becomes a subpoena target. Discovery is where private behavior gets put under oath. If the family pulls that trigger, Joe McCann is going to get destroyed in deposition. He is not ready emotionally, legally, or mentally for what happens when American litigators put him under oath in a fluorescently lit conference room with a court reporter typing every word. I have watched aggressive civil teams chew up wealthy defendants twice his size. He does not stand a chance. This case is going to become a permanent reference point. Mark it. Save it. Bookmark it. Every single time a Black woman influencer travels overseas with a partner from outside her community, Ashley Genai's name is going to get cited in the comments, in the safety blogs, in the protective conversations Black mothers have with their daughters at the kitchen table. Every time a crypto founder tries to soft launch a relationship for brand rehab purposes, journalists are going to pull the McCann file off the shelf. Every documentary producer in the true crime space is currently, right now, drafting a treatment for this story. Don't believe me? Pay attention to who shows up at Sundance 2027. And in 5 years, when that documentary drops, and trust me, it will drop, Joe McCann is going to be the face on the thumbnail. Not Ashley. Not Harry. Not Savannah. Him. And that is the moment everyone is going to remember as when his relevance officially flatlined. Right now, at this very minute, he is watching the culture move on without him from a hotel room in Zanzibar with a confiscated passport and absolutely nothing he can do about it. Asymmetric Financial as a brand? Cooked. Future LP Capital? Gone. His seat on the crypto conference panel circuit? Vaporized. His invite to Joe Budden's next birthday dinner? Y'all already know the answer. 5 years from now, people will look back at the year 2026 and say this was the biggest L the entire crypto industry took on a personal level, and Joe McCann will be the man who took it. So whatever happens, whether the autopsy confirms, expands, or contradicts, whether the criminal case lands first or the civil case beats it to the courthouse steps, whether the documentary drops in 2027 or 2028, one thing is already crystal clear, and you heard it here first. Joe McCann already lost. The only thing left to determine is how long it takes the rest of the world to officially write it down. Rest in power, Ashley Robinson. We see you. We hear you. And the receipts? The receipts are not going anywhere. Anywhere. Thanks for watching. If you got anything out of this breakdown, if you want me to keep pulling on threads other channels are too scared to touch, smash that like button and hit subscribe right now so you never miss the moment we expose what everyone else is too polite to say out loud. And ring that bell for notifications. And drop your theory in the comments. I read every single one of them. Got a take? Drop it below. Got more receipts? Drop them. I read all the DMs. This is not the last time we talk about this case. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.